I stared at the text on Trent's phone, my heart pounding as the words burned into my mind. I love it when you call me that. Can't wait for tomorrow. It was clearly not meant for me. We were supposed to be celebrating my big promotion over dinner, but now everything felt like a lie. Trent must have noticed the look on my face because he quickly tried to grab his phone back. "Mallory, it's not what you think," he stammered, his eyes wide with panic. I felt sick to my stomach, like I'd been punched in the gut. How could he do this to me? To us? After everything we'd been through together? Trent's sister Cassandra looked bewildered, glancing between us. "What's going on?" Before Trent could make up some lame excuse, I stood up abruptly, the fancy restaurant seeming to spin around me. "We're leaving. Now." The drive back to our apartment was agonizingly silent. I kept replaying that damn text over and over, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. When we got inside, I finally exploded. "Who is she?" I demanded, rounding on Trent. "How long has this been going on?" He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. "Don't you dare lie to me." Trent's shoulders slumped in defeat. "It's been a few months. I'm so sorry, Mallory." A few months. While we'd been planning our wedding, looking at venues, he'd been sneaking around behind my back. Hot tears of anger and hurt streamed down my face. "I can't believe you," I choked out. "We're through." I stormed into the bedroom, slamming and locking the door behind me. I collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into the pillow until I had no tears left. That's when the anger truly set in, burning through me with white-hot intensity. Trent wanted to play these games? Fine. I would make him regret the day he ever betrayed me. This was not over, not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a burning desire for vengeance. Trent was still asleep on the couch when I emerged from the bedroom, looking pathetic and guilty even in his unconscious state. "Wake up," I snapped, startling him. He jerked awake, eyes widening as he took in my stony expression. "Mallory, I'm so—" "Save it," I cut him off coldly. "I don't want to hear any more of your lies and excuses." Trent swallowed hard, looking like a scolded child. Good. He should feel ashamed. "Who is she?" I demanded again. "I want to know everything." He hesitated, but one withering look from me made him crumble. "Her name is Jessica. We met at a work conference 6 months ago and—" He trailed off miserably. White-hot fury coursed through me at the thought of him carrying on an affair for half a year while I naively planned our future together. "Have you been using protection?" I asked through gritted teeth, realizing with horror that he could have brought home God knows what. Trent had the decency to look even more ashamed. "And no, I haven't." I felt dizzy with disgust and rage. This man I had loved, had trusted more than anyone, had lied to me, used me, disrespected me in the worst way. Something inside me hardened like steel. "Get out," I said in a low, dangerous voice. "What?" Trent looked stricken. "You heard me," I said coldly. "Get your stuff and get out of my apartment. We're done." He opened his mouth to protest, but I leveled him with a look that could cut glass. Shoulders slumping in defeat, Trent dragged himself to the bedroom to pack a bag. As I watched him slink out the door, I felt a dark sense of satisfaction take root in my heart. This was just the beginning. I would make Trent pay for what he'd done, no matter what it took. And by the time I was finished, his life would be in ruins. Over the next few days, I operated with cold, plus ruthless efficiency. I started by contacting a private investigator and giving them all the details about Trent's infidelity. I wanted every sordid detail of his affair exposed. Then I got to work gathering my own evidence. I dug through our old phone records, bank statements, anything that could reveal more about the depth of Trent's betrayal. With each new discovery, the flames of my fury burned hotter. Thankfully, I had an amazing support system in my friends. When I told them what that bastard had done, they were outraged on my behalf. "That piece of garbage!" Steph raged when I showed her the hotel receipts. "I'll kill him myself." "You're too good for that lying snake," Dana seethed, wrapping a supportive arm around me. "We'll make him pay, I promise." Their unconditional love and loyalty gave me strength during those dark days. I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing it for all the women who had ever been cheated on and mistreated by selfish men like Trent. With my friend's help, I formulated a plan of attack. First, we would systematically dismantle Trent's professional life by leaking proof of his indiscretions to his boss and colleagues. Then we'd take down his social status by revealing his true nature to his smarmy country club pals. Finally, I would deliver the killing blow by crushing his ego and leaving him a pariah. By the time I was done, Trent Holden would be less than a memory. The thought of destroying him brought me a vicious sense of satisfaction. Still, a small part of me felt a twinge of sadness for the man I had once loved. I quickly shoved those feelings aside. Trent had made his bed, and now he could lie in it. My friends noticed my dark mood and tried to lift my spirits. "Let's go out tonight," Monica suggested brightly. "Get your mind off of things." I managed a small smile, grateful for their efforts to cheer me up. "Sure, why not? I could use a distraction." As we headed to our favorite club that night, I caught my reflection in a storefront window. My eyes burned with a hardness I didn't recognize. In that moment, I knew there was no going back. Revenge wasn't just something I wanted, it was something I needed, like air, and I would stop at nothing until Trent's world lay in ashes around him. With the evidence gathered by the private investigator, I was locked and loaded. It was time to start taking Trent down, one piece at a time. First, I anonymously sent a file containing proof of his affair to his boss at the investment firm. Explicit photos, receipts for secret hotel trysts, the works. I made sure to include a polite note about how such indiscretions could open the company up to sexual harassment lawsuits. A few days later, the hammer dropped. Trent was called into an emergency meeting and unceremoniously suspended pending further investigation into his unethical behavior. When I caught wind of the news from Monica, who worked in the same building, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. That was just a taste of what was to come. Next, I turned my sights to dismantling Trent's social status. I may have been raised working class, but I knew how important keeping up appearances was to that smarmy country club crowd he ran with. I created an anonymous email account and sent graphic details of his affair to the board members of his snobby golf club. I even included a few choicely censored photos just to rub salt in the wound. Within a week, Trent had been asked to resign his membership after several decades. Rumors spread like wildfire amongst the cuckolded housewives who ran those upper-crust social circles. But I wasn't done yet. If I wanted to leave Trent well and truly broken, I needed to completely decimate his ego and reputation in our community. That opportunity came at the next meeting of our Neighborhood Beautification Committee, of all places. I haunted those meetings like a ghost, half listening as Trent pompously held court while the other wives and I rolled our eyes. When he launched into another blustery diatribe about the import of maintaining community values, I couldn't stop myself. "Speaking of values," I said loudly, cutting him off, "I have something to share about our esteemed committee chairman." You could have heard a pin drop as all eyes swiveled towards me. Trent paled, realizing where this was going. "Trent here has been having an affair for months," I proclaimed, holding up a manila envelope. "With proof." The explosion of gasps and outcries was a beautiful cacophony to my ears. Trent frantically tried to deflect as I read out the lurid details, but it was too late. His polished veneer of respectability shattered into a million pieces that day, and as I watched him crumble under the weight of his exposed lies, I felt like a goddess of vengeance. The game was oh so deliciously afoot. The next phase of my plan required a more public approach. I decided to strike at the next major charity gala our social circle always attended. It was the perfect stage to completely undermine Trent's crumbling reputation. As I got ready that night, I could feel the excited energy thrumming through me. This was the moment I had been meticulously preparing for. With each swing of the metaphorical sword, I'd been slowly severing Trent's ties to this community. Tonight, I would go for the killing blow. When we arrived at the fancy venue, Trent tried to put on a brave face, but I could see the flicker of fear in his eyes as he scanned the crowd, realizing the damage I'd already done. His usual sycophants were giving him a wide berth, whispering behind raised hands. I swept through the room like royalty, head held high. A server offered me a glass of champagne, which I accepted with a regal nod. The bubbles danced on my tongue as I sipped slowly, savoring the moment. Eventually, it came time for the speeches. A hush fell over the ballroom as the host took the stage to thank everyone for their generous donations. Then, almost as an afterthought, He gestured for me to join him. "We'd also like to acknowledge Mallory Greaves tonight," the host said as I ascended the steps, "for her outstanding leadership and community service over the past year." A smattering of polite applause broke out, but I could feel the energy in the room shift as people realized I was about to speak. Trent looked almost gray as our eyes locked. "Thank you all," I began, my voice ringing with poise and confidence. "It's truly an honor to give back to our community in whatever way I can." I paused, letting that magnanimous statement hang in the air for a beat. Then I went for the jugular. "Unfortunately, not everyone here tonight shares those same values of honor, integrity, and commitment. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone watched with bated breath, and I could sense Trent's panic rising. Some put on a good show," I continued, holding his stricken gaze. "But behind closed doors, they lie, cheat, and betray the very principles this community was built on." A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd as people put two and two together. Trent looked like he wanted to melt through the floor. "Those are not my values," I said firmly, "and they should not be anyone's values if we want to create a society of trust and respect." The applause that followed was thunderous. I gracefully rejoined my table, leaving Trent to stew in humiliation. He tried to storm out, but another attendee blocked his way, loudly condemning his deplorable behavior. As the night raged on, I basked in the triumph of watching my revenge play out so perfectly. Trent deserved every ounce of scorn and embarrassment headed his way, and I was just getting started. After the charity gala, it was like a dam had burst. The evidence of Trent's misdeeds spread through our social circles like wildfire, burning everything in its path. Within days, he was indefinitely suspended from his job at the investment firm, pending further investigation into the mounting allegations of misconduct. His fair-weather friends at the country club didn't even pretend to be subtle. Trent's membership was permanently revoked. Meanwhile, I reveled in my newfound infamy, catching snippets of gossip everywhere I went. "Did you hear what that snake Trent did? Mallory is such a badass for taking him down like that." With each new story of Trent's downfall, I felt more powerful, more vindicated. This was justice being served. Of course, he tried to confront me to do damage control. Trent showed up at my door one night, eyes blazing with impotent rage. "What have you done?" He snarled as I calmly opened the door. "You've ruined my entire life." I simply raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "I'm just revealing the truth about who you really are. Everything you're going through is nobody's fault but your own." Trent's face contorted with anger, and he took a step forward, fists clenched. An empty threat. We both knew he didn't have the guts to actually hit me. "This isn't over," he spat. "I'll make you pay for this, you vindictive "I'd watch your tone if I were you." I cut him off coldly. "Your life is already in tatters thanks to your own despicable actions. Don't make it worse for yourself." With that, I shut the door in his stunned face, not even giving him the satisfaction of a reaction. Let him stew in the mess of his own creation for a while. In the coming weeks, the noose only tightened around Trent's neck. Gripped by morbid curiosity, I started collecting the articles and social media posts that detailed his spectacular fall from grace. There was the scathing editorial from the local paper, dressing him down as a modern-day cad, the deluge of Facebook and Twitter comments from former associates and friends, calling him every insult under the sun. His promising career was in ashes, his reputation forever stained. And to think, this was all just the beginning of what I had planned for him. As the public condemnation crescendoed, Trent started looking gray and haggard, like the life was being drained from him. Good. I wanted him to suffer, to feel even a fraction of the anguish and humiliation he'd put me through. When our mutual friend Monica invited us both to her housewarming party, I knew it was the perfect chance to twist the knife even deeper. I arrived early, greeting the other guests with my usual poise as Trent sulked in the corner, a pariah. This was going to be fun. The housewarming party was in full swing when Trent finally showed his face. As soon as he walked through the door, the atmosphere chilled. People stopped mid-conversation to gawk at the man who had become a public disgrace. Trent's eyes frantically scanned the crowd until they landed on me, holding court by the bar. A snarl twisted his features as he stalked over. "You just can't let this go, can you?" he hissed under his breath. You've already taken everything from me. What more could you possibly want? I simply smiled thinly and took a sip of my drink. The truth will come out sooner or later, Trent. I'm just expediting the process. He opened his mouth to retort, but a sudden lull in the chatter made us both freeze. All eyes had turned towards us with undisguised interest. Seizing the moment, Trent puffed out his chest and raised his voice for all to hear. Listen, everyone, I know there's been a lot of unfair rumors circulating about me recently, but I can assure you, they're just that, vicious lies perpetuated by a vengeful ex. A disbelieving murmur rippled through the crowd. Trent wasn't deterred, clearly hoping to sway the audience to his side through bluster alone. Mallory is simply lashing out because she couldn't handle the end of our relationship like a mature adult. This campaign of defamation is nothing more than the unhinged actions of a woman scorned. My hand tightened around my glass as I felt the weight of dozens of accusing stares. How dare he try to play the victim? To rewrite the narrative as if he wasn't a lying, cheating snake? Is that so? A cool voice rang out from the back of the room. We all turned to see Monica pushing through the throng of onlookers, a familiar manila envelope clutched in her hand. Oh no, she wouldn't, would she? Trent seemed to realize the same thing, his face draining of color. Monica, whatever you think you know. Save it, Trent, she said flatly, joining me at the center of the makeshift arena. I have proof right here of everything. Bank statements showing your money trail to hotels and apartments for your little trysts, texts and emails between you and your mistress, even photos and video if anyone needs further convincing. A shocked silence fell over the party as Monica flipped open the envelope, letting a few incriminating photos spill out onto the counter. Up-close shots of Trent in compromising positions with his lover, leaving no doubt as to their indecent activities. You make me sick. Monica snarled at the shell-shocked Trent, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. How could you do this to Mallory, to all of us who considered you a friend? She jabbed an accusing finger at the graphic evidence. This is who you are, Trent. A liar, a cheater, a total embarrassment to anyone who ever trusted you. Mallory is done letting you get away with your lies and deceptions. A smattering of disgusted murmurs echoed through the crowd as they finally saw Trent for the vile snake he truly was. He looked around wildly, searching for any scrap of support or sympathy, but finding only scorn and revulsion. Shoulders slumped in defeat, Trent turned and fled the party without another word, disappearing into the night from which there would be no redemption. I watched him go with a mixture of pity and vicious satisfaction. The once proud man was now a hated pariah, and he had no one to blame but himself. Turning to Monica with a grateful smile, I pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank you, I murmured, fighting back joyful tears. For everything. This was the end of Trent Holden, and I had never felt more vindicated or powerful in my life. A few months later, I could finally breathe again. The cloud of anger and obsession that had consumed me after Trent's betrayal had lifted, allowing the sun to peek through once more. As I settled into my swanky new corner office at work, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. My hard work and perseverance had paid off. I'd been promoted to senior marketing director in the wake of the old director's abrupt resignation. Rumor was the scandal surrounding his colleague Trent had been the final straw that broke the company's tolerance for unethical behavior. I smiled wryly, knowing I had played more than a small role in that chain of events. These days, Trent's name was like a dirty word around town. He'd become a virtual pariah, unable to show his face without getting pelted with disgusted looks and whispers. Some nights when I was feeling nostalgic, I'd scroll through the countless think pieces and social media posts dissecting his downfall, my lips curling into a satisfied smirk each time. Entitled creep finally gets what he deserves. Massachusetts man revealed as lying, cheating scumbag. My personal favorite. Mythological furies have nothing on this scorned woman's wrath. The audacity of my revenge plot had become stuff of urban legend in certain circles. I didn't mind. Let the cautionary tale of what happened to Trent Holden serve as a warning for any other unfaithful creeps out there. My friends, of course, remained loyal supporters through it all. We'd crack open a bottle of cheap white wine and raise sarcastic toasts to Trent's increasing misery, to the disgraced dog finally being neutered, to burns so sick they're going to need medical attention. Those nights filled with raucous laughter and female solidarity made the darkness of those first few weeks feel like a lifetime ago. I had found my voice, my power, and I refused to let any man make me a victim again. Still, there was one last bit of unfinished business with my wretched ex. One night, my phone pinged with a number I didn't recognize. "Mallory, it's me. I know you probably never want to speak to me again, but I need to see you, to apologize properly, face to face, for all the pain I caused you. Please give me a chance to make things right." I stared at the message, letting the words wash over me. Part of me was tempted to meet him, if only to savor the sight of how far he'd fallen. The once cocky, arrogant Trent brought to his knees, begging for forgiveness he'd never deserve. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew there was no point in dredging up the past any longer, that Trent and all his lies and betrayals belonged to another lifetime that I had outgrown. With a decisive swipe, I deleted the message and blocked the number. That chapter of my life was over. Looking around my sleek new apartment with its stunning views, I felt a surge of liberation and excitement for the future. I was a new woman, forging her own story from the ashes of heartbreak and vengeance, and this time it would be one built on truth, on strength, on respect for myself above all others. Bring it on, world. I was more than ready. I never expected to come home to a mystery. My name is Emily, a 29-year-old sales manager, and I had just returned from a business trip in New York. My husband Daniel was supposed to be on a trip to Chicago. Our quiet suburban home, usually dark and empty during our mutual absences, was strangely alive with light. As I dragged my suitcase up the driveway, our neighbor Sarah approached me. Her expression was a mix of concern and awkwardness. "Emily, I thought you were away. The noise last night. I'm sorry if we disturbed you," she said, biting her lip. Confusion clouded my mind. "I just got back, Sarah. What noise?" Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, I thought you were home. Your lights have been on every night this week. I heard some laughter and music last night. I assumed you guys were throwing a small party or something." I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. Daniel was supposed to be in Chicago, not here having parties. "No, it wasn't us. Daniel's away on business," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah's face mirrored my confusion. "That's odd. Well, welcome back, Emily." With that, she retreated, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. Inside, the house felt different. It was too neat. The air held a faint scent of perfume, not mine. I moved through the rooms, my heart racing. Then I saw them. A pair of red high heels by the bed, shoes I had never seen before. They sat there, silently screaming a truth I wasn't ready to face. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Dialing my in-laws, I put on my best cheerful voice. "Hi, Linda. Hi, George. I have a great idea. How about a surprise dinner for Daniel? He's supposed to come back tomorrow. Let's pretend I'm still away and give him a surprise welcome." Their enthusiastic agreement did little to ease the dread coiling in my gut. As I ended the call, I knew one thing for sure. Something was terribly wrong, and I was about to uncover it. The stage was set, and the players were about to assemble. The truth awaited, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. The evening was cool and quiet as Linda and George, my in-laws, pulled into our driveway. Their faces were bright with excitement for the surprise. I greeted them with a forced smile, masking the turmoil inside me. "Emily, darling, this is such a fun idea. Daniel will be so surprised," Linda chirped as she hugged me. I nodded, leading them inside. "He thinks I'm still out of town. Let's hide in the living room and wait for him to arrive." The tension was palpable as we settled in. The unfamiliar pair of high heels I had found earlier glared at me from the corner, a stark reminder of the betrayal lurking in my own home. An hour passed, and then we heard the front door open. My heart pounded in my chest as we heard footsteps approaching. The living room door swung open, and there stood Daniel, frozen in shock. "Emily? Mom? Dad? What's going on?" His voice faltered, eyes darting nervously. "Surprise!" Linda exclaimed, but her smile faded as she took in Daniel's guilty expression. "Daniel, why are you so surprised to see your wife in her own house? And why do we hear rumors that you've been here all week?" George's voice was stern, his usual jovial demeanor gone. Daniel's face flushed red. I had to come back early, work stuff. I didn't tell Emily because I wanted to surprise her. I stepped forward, holding up the red high heels. And who do these belong to, Daniel? Surprising me with a guest. His eyes widened in panic. That's not what it looks like, Emily. Before he could say more, we heard a noise upstairs. Footsteps. Slowly descending. I felt Linda and George's bewildered gaze on me as a young woman appeared at the foot of the stairs. It was Rachel, a former colleague known for her flirtatious behavior and disregard for boundaries. Daniel, who are all these people? Rachel asked, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. The room fell silent. Linda's hand flew to her mouth, and George's face turned to stone. I looked at Daniel, betrayal etching a deep scar in my heart. Rachel, meet my parents and my wife, Emily, Daniel stammered, his facade crumbling. Linda's eyes brimmed with tears, and George's voice shook with anger. You bring a woman into your marital home? This is how you respect your marriage? The confrontation escalated as accusations and denials flew. Rachel's smug expression only fueled my growing rage. This was the breaking point, the moment my marriage turned to dust. As the night wore on, the truth became painfully clear. My world had been shattered, but from its ruins, a fierce resolve was born. Daniel and Rachel would not get away with this betrayal. The stage for revenge was set, and I was ready to play my part. The morning after the confrontation was heavy with unspoken words. Linda and George had left, their disappointment palpable. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched coffee, my mind racing with cold, hard thoughts of revenge. Daniel emerged from the guest room, his eyes avoiding mine. Emily, we need to talk, he began hesitantly. I looked up, my voice icy. There's nothing to talk about. I want a divorce. He flinched as if struck. Please, Emily, it's not what you think. I was lonely, you were always away, and Rachel, it just happened. I slammed my hand on the table, startling him. Just happened? You betrayed our marriage, Daniel, and in our home. There's no excuse for that. Daniel's attempts at explanation were feeble, filled with cliches and blame-shifting. It was clear he was more concerned about being caught than the actual infidelity. I stood up, my decision firm. I'll be contacting a lawyer today. I want you out of this house. But Emily, this house, it's ours, he protested weakly. No, Daniel, it's mine. You forget, your credit was a mess. This house is in my name only. And remember, you've never paid a dime towards the mortgage. His face paled, realization dawning. I didn't care. The man I loved had been a facade, and I was done playing the forgiving wife. As I walked away to make the call, I could feel his eyes on my back, filled with desperation and regret. But it was too late. My heart had turned to stone. The lawyer was sympathetic and efficient. You have a strong case, Emily, especially considering the infidelity and the financial aspects. I nodded, feeling a sense of empowerment. I want to sue for emotional distress as well. He's not going to walk away from this unscathed. Understood, the lawyer replied. We'll make sure he pays for what he's done. Word of Daniel's infidelity spread like wildfire, tainting his reputation. Colleagues and friends looked at him differently now. He had become a pariah, an outcast in the community we once shared. As I lay in bed that night, the silence of the house was a stark contrast to the chaos in my heart. The path of revenge was lonely, but necessary. Daniel had to learn that his actions had consequences. This was just the beginning. The weeks following the revelation were a blur of legal consultations and cold, sleepless nights. My resolve for revenge never wavered, even as Daniel's pleas for forgiveness became more desperate and frequent. One afternoon, as I was sifting through divorce papers, the doorbell rang. Standing outside was Rachel, her face a mask of arrogance and defiance. "Can we talk, Emily?" she asked, trying to push past me into the house. I blocked her path, my voice steady but cold. "There's nothing to discuss. You're not welcome here." Rachel's eyes flashed with anger. "Daniel loves me. You can't just throw him out like this. It's not fair." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Fair? You talk about fairness after sneaking around with my husband? You're as delusional as he is." Her face contorted with fury. "You're ruining his life, and for what? Revenge? You're pathetic." I stepped closer, my voice laced with venom. "No, Rachel, what's pathetic is a woman who preys on a married man. You both deserve what's coming to you." She scoffed and turned away, but not before I saw the uncertainty flicker in her eyes. They knew their affair wasn't just a harmless fling anymore. It had consequences, and they were just starting to feel them. the news of the lawsuit and divorce spread like wildfire. Daniel's reputation at work crumbled. Whispers followed him everywhere, and his professional relationships soured. Rachel, too, found herself isolated, her manipulative charm no longer effective. The day Daniel was let go from his job, he came to me, a broken man. "Emily, please. I've lost everything. My job, my reputation. Isn't that enough?" I looked at him, feeling nothing but disdain. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me. This is the bed you've made, Daniel. Now lie in it." As I closed the door on his pleading face, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. This was the revenge I had sought, to see him lose everything, just as I had lost my trust and love for him. But even as I savored the moment, a hollow feeling lingered in my heart. Revenge had its price, and I was beginning to understand the cost. The divorce proceedings were a cold, methodical process. Each session in the lawyer's office was a reminder of the irrevocable damage Daniel had inflicted on our marriage. He seemed to shrink with each meeting, a shadow of the confident man I had married. One day, as the autumn leaves began to turn, I received a call from Linda. Her voice, usually warm and cheerful, was heavy with disappointment. "Emily, we saw Daniel yesterday. He's not doing well." I paused, unsure how to feel. "Linda, he made his choices." "I know, dear, but he's our son. He's lost his job, his friends. Now he's talking about leaving town. It's just heartbreaking to see him like this." I sighed, a part of me softening. "I understand, Linda, but he brought this on himself. I'm moving on with my life." The call ended on a somber note. I couldn't deny a twinge of pity for Daniel, but it was drowned out by the echo of his betrayal. A week later, Daniel's voice came through my phone, small and defeated. "Emily, the company let me go. They said it was because of the lawsuit and the scandal. I've got nothing left." His words should have brought me satisfaction, but all I felt was emptiness. "You should have thought about the consequences, Daniel. I hope you find a way to rebuild your life, but it won't be with me." Hanging up, I realized the revenge I had sought was a hollow victory. Yes, Daniel was paying for his actions, but the cost was higher than I had anticipated. It wasn't just his life unraveling, it was a part of mine too. As the days passed, the house felt more like a shell, a reminder of a life that once was. My victories in court, the compensations, the apologies, they all felt meaningless. The finality of the divorce papers was a stark, unyielding end to a chapter I once cherished. I began to understand that revenge, no matter how justified, doesn't always bring the closure one seeks. It was a lesson learned in the hardest way, through the pain of a broken heart and a broken marriage. Time, they say, heals all wounds. It was a slow, painful process, but gradually the raw edges of betrayal and anger began to fade. I immersed myself in work and reconnected with old friends, building a life that was entirely my own. 2 years had passed since the divorce when I met Alex. He was different from anyone I'd ever known, kind, understanding, and with a warmth that seemed to light up the darkest corners of my past. With him, I rediscovered what it felt like to trust and love again. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset, Alex took my hand. "Emily, I know your past has been painful, but I want to be part of your future. Will you marry me?" The proposal was simple, yet it filled me with a sense of hope I hadn't felt in years. "Yes, Alex, I would love that." We married in a small, intimate ceremony. It was a new beginning, a chance to leave the shadows of the past behind. A year into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. The news brought a joy so profound, it eclipsed the lingering bitterness of my previous marriage. When our son Ethan was born, holding him in my arms felt like holding a piece of the future, bright and full of possibilities. It was during one of these peaceful days that I received an unexpected call. It was Daniel. His voice was hesitant, a far cry from the confident man he once was. "Emily, I heard you've moved on, that you're happy. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." His apology, late and inadequate, didn't stir the old anger I expected. Instead, I found myself feeling indifferent. "Thank you, Daniel. I've moved on. I wish you well." As I hung up, I realized that I had truly turned a page. The hurt and betrayal that once consumed me had lost their grip. In their place was a life filled with love, a family I adored, and a future that was mine to shape. 3 years after my divorce from Daniel, life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. My days were filled with the laughter of my son and the quiet, steadfast love of Alex. The shadows of the past had dimmed, replaced by the bright promise of the present. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I pushed Ethan's stroller through the park, I spotted a familiar figure on a distant bench. It was Daniel. He looked older, warier, a stark contrast to the man who once shared my life. Our eyes met, and in a moment of unexpected courage, I approached him. "Emily?" he said softly, his voice tinged with a mix of surprise and remorse. "Daniel," I replied, feeling a strange sense of detachment. "How have you been?" He glanced at Ethan, then back at me. "I've been surviving. Seeing you now with your son, you look happy." "I am," I said, not without a sense of pride. "Life has moved on, Daniel. I've found happiness again." He nodded, looking down at his hands. "I never did. After everything that happened, after losing you, my job, I realized the cost of my mistakes, but it was too late." His words were heavy with regret, but they no longer had the power to hurt me. "We all make choices, Daniel, and we live with them. I hope you find some peace." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "I'm glad you're happy, Emily. You deserved better than what I gave you. I'm truly sorry." As I left the park that day, with Ethan babbling happily in his stroller, I felt a sense of closure. The final chapter of a painful part of my life was concluding, and the future stretched out before me, filled with hope and light. In the end, the greatest revenge was not in seeing Daniel suffer, but in building a life of joy and love beyond him. A life where the scars of the past were just faint lines, testaments to my strength and resilience. I walked home that day with a light heart, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but it had led me to a place of peace and contentment, and for that I was profoundly grateful.